Your name has been mentioned a lot in recent weeks and months, a lot by your supporters who say, remember when Governor Romney was mocked for saying Russia was our #1 geopolitical foe? And remember when Vice President Biden went after him for wanting to start a war in Syria? And I think there's a feeling among some supporters that you've been vindicated to a large degree. How have you looked at the events regarding Syria and Russia in the last few weeks?
Well, I don't spend time looking back, and I'm vindicated in my own mind from the beginning, so obviously I wouldn't have said what I said if I didn't believe it was right. And I think we recognize increasingly that Russia is not an enemy, if it's certainly not a military combatant foe, but it is a political foe. The world's worst actors, whether it's North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Syria, Iran, are all supported or protected to some degree by Russia.
So are you skeptical of this UN Security Council resolution, or do you think there's potential there that it could work when it comes to Syria's chemical weapons?
Oh, I think there's real potential that Syria will eliminate their chemical weapons, catalog them. That I think is a positive outcome from this, this whole effort in Syria. But would I place my life on it without verifying it? Of course not. This is something which is going to have to be thoroughly vetted and evaluated and assured that neither Syria nor Russia does anything to allow these weapons to escape, for instance, to Iran, to ultimately be brought back or to be used there.
Do you think President Obama did the right thing by threatening to use force against Syria?
I think it was very clear that once he had indicated that there was a red line that we would not go beyond without some kind of retaliation or some kind of effort, that there had to be, in effect, a follow-through on that commitment. And so the president needed to do something, but gosh, helping the group that's associated in some way with al-Qaeda didn't look right, and helping Assad certainly wasn't right, so we had no good choices. That's what comes of not being involved at the critical moment and not being able to see what is the critical moment. And I'm afraid that we missed that opportunity.
The president was criticized a lot, not only by Republicans, but by Democrats and independents and analysts for zigzagging a few weeks ago. What was your reaction watching him that Saturday when he came out and said that it was his desire to strike, but he wanted to go to Congress first?
It was not the president's finest hour. Dealing with the Syria development and the use of chemical weapons there, he looked like he hadn't thought it through and hadn't considered the right course in advance. And I think we lost some respect in the region, and certainly lost respect with friends and allies around the world. When you have Great Britain, for instance, say, look, we're not going to get behind this.
But do you think that's a manifestation of President Obama's leadership, or just a very war-weary British public, in the same way we have a war-weary American public here that doesn't support action in Syria?
Well, I think the President of the United States, as he plans what action he thinks is appropriate, needs to think through all the options from the very beginning, settle on the one he considers to be the most effective, and then communicate that aggressively with whatever audience he thinks needs to hear it. And that was not done.
Let's talk about Iran, because that's also a situation going on right now. Do you think that Rouhani, the new president of Iran, could be legitimately ushering in a new era? He came out very openly, said, we don't want nuclear weapons, we only want nuclear power, and that's all we've ever wanted.
Well, first of all, you have to be skeptical when people say we're just looking for nuclear power when their nation is on a lake of oil. Right? So that's part one. Part two, he really doesn't set the nuclear policy of his nation. That's done by Ayatollah Khomeini. And so he doesn't actually have the capacity to call those shots. But is he a moderate voice? Perhaps. But let's pursue this course as aggressively as we can. But recognize again that there's a great deal of skepticism with regards to Iran's intentions, in part because of their energy wealth and the likelihood that what they're trying to do is to become the superpower of the Middle East, with dire consequences for other nations in the region.
Even before the Syria crisis, people were questioning Russia and the relationship with the United States because Russia granted asylum to Edward Snowden, the NSA whistleblower or leaker, whatever your view. If you were president, is the NSA surveillance a program that you think is worthwhile?
Well, there have clearly been errors made in the way the surveillance was carried out and policies that were not followed. I read this morning a story about individuals having followed their love life and their love, and so these kinds of things are unacceptable and have to be, there has to be punishment associated with that, and you have to follow the rules and procedures of an organization. That being said, do you want to have an organization which has computers looking at millions of emails and tweets and phone calls looking for patterns in words that suggest there may be terrorist activity going on? And the answer is, in my view, yes. You want to have that information. You want to protect this country.
As a major party nominee for president, you receive security and national security briefings. Have you also learned things that reaffirmed your belief in these NSA programs, or was it just always what you thought?
No, you're right, Jake, which is that after I became the nominee of the Republican Party, the intelligence community provided me with the kinds of briefings that are provided to the president, so that in the event I became elected, I would be prepared to move forward with whatever decisions had to be taken. And I came away with a recognition that we face very substantial security threats from terrorist organizations and
individuals. Worse than you thought before? I mean, obviously you had a realization.
Yeah. The answer is, of course, a great deal worse than I thought, in that I was given more specifics as to the types of technology and the types of organizations that could pose a potential threat, either here or to our friends and to our citizens living abroad. And that continues to be the case. That look, we only have to look around us in the world to see that there are very dangerous things occurring, and the idea that somehow we can stop them with a magnetometer at the entrance to a mall, or at the entrance to a stadium, or at the entrance to an Olympics is not real. The only and by far the most effective way of preventing terrorist attack is intelligence.
And speaking of the Olympics, Wolf, I asked him, as somebody who ran the 2002 Olympics, what did he think about the calls to boycott the Olympics in Russia because of their anti-gay legislation. He said he didn't think the Olympics were a place for politics. He disagreed with Jimmy Carter boycotting the 1980 Olympics. It was about the athletes and the pursuit of excellence on the field.
Yeah,
Well,
so